What's going on, everybody? This is RavenSky Keystone Farm Gardens. This is going to be a part 2 video of how to prune your tomato plants or a full-grown tomato plant. All of these tomato plants have been pruned in the past, all down here, which is why they kind of look the way they do. For the most part, they're pruned. I would say about every week or two. They grow significantly enough that I have got to go back and re-prune all of them. And train them to keep going up the same direction, and to keep training the little babies, the little baby branches, baby suckers that we're going to use to replace the main branch once the main branch has completely produced all the fruit that it's gonna produce, and we go ahead and stunt the growth by cutting the top of it. Again, we're only trying to let the tomato plant grow about 7 feet. And then we want to go ahead and replace it with a sucker branch at the bottom, which we let grow behind the main stalk here. So this is a closed loop system. Again, I mentioned that in the first video. I thought this might be good. This would be good for you and good for me to learn how to do these instructional videos. And not every tomato plant is going to be the same. You're going to have different types of tomato plants. And everyone, they're all case sensitive, and they're all going to need special attention to some degree. And so I just thought it might be, for those of you who are tomato plant fanatics, well, I guess a tomato plant fanatic would already know how to prune their plant. But if you don't know how to prune your plant, this is going to be another instructional video on how to prune and maintain. Last video, we actually did this plant right here, you can see, and this was my benchmark tomato plant. If you want to see the video on me pruning that one, you'll just have to go back in the previous video. I'll get them labeled later, so it's a little more easier to find. Today we're going to be working on this plant right here, this particular plant, and I'm going to do the best I can to explain what it is I'm doing. Sometimes I may get quiet, and that might be just for you to watch and learn, and for me to think about what it is I need to do next, because sometimes it's hard to talk and prune a plant at the same time, especially when I've got to sit down and make a decision about something. So, as before, what I've said, this is not an easy thing to do with one hand. So I'm sitting down on my chair. I've got myself a little chair here that I use, and I get up and down from it from time to time. These are the shears that I'm using, and this is really all I use out here in the garden pretty much with all my plants. So this is a fully mature plant. You can see that it's got tomatoes growing all up in it. You can also notice that you cannot see very much light going through here, and it's kind of getting up top. It looks pretty decent. But as you start coming down the tomato plant, you'll notice that there's less light coming through. And that means that there's less wind being blown through the tomato plant, and potentially stunting its growth, and could cause other future problems with the plant, including diseases and pest problems. The pests, they do like to hide. They'll hide up in here because they don't get blown by the wind, they don't get hit by the fogger, and they don't get the sun. So they will actually just sit on here right on top of a tomato, and you won't even notice it because you can't see through here. There's no aeration in this plant, or there's not enough, I should say. So I'm gonna do my best to walk you through what you actually need to do for this particular tomato plant. So this tomato plant has already been, has already been pruned before, obviously. It's only got one stalk, the main stalk down here. And normally you'd want to start this type of pruning when the plant is a lot smaller, so that way you could actually save a couple little baby suckers at the bottom to replace your main stem later. But in this case, I came upon all this information after the fact. So we're essentially dealing with a tomato plant that's got a long stem on it with really no sucker branches to speak of, except for this one right here, which we could potentially use to replace the entire plant at some point. So the first thing I'm going to try to do is I've got to increase the visibility of what I'm doing and also the aeration of the plant. And usually one of the first things I do, especially since this has already been pruned, is I simply follow the main branch up here. And I try to find branches such as this that are unnecessary, and sucker branches that are also unnecessary. So basically you got 3 branches that come off of the stalk. You have the, I don't know what this is called, but it's a branch that produces fruit. So it's your fruit branch, right? You have another branch, which is essentially this type of branch right here. And this is the branch that does the photosynthesis and takes the nutrients to the plant and makes it grow. And then you have the little sucker branches that grow right out of the armpit, sort of the photosynthesis branch right here. So you basically have your sucker branch, your food or your photosynthesis branch, and then you have your fruit branch. And those are pretty much the only branches that grow off the tomato plants. So what I'm essentially going to do is I'm going to follow the main stalk, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this this fruit branch. Even though it's got 1 tomato left, that's not really a concern for me because this was a high yielding plant to begin with, and I would rather have the aeration than waiting around for 1 tomato to ripen up. So the next thing is following it up here. I can see that there's I don't even know if you can see that. I gotta take my sunglasses off so I can see my screen. So I don't know if you can see in here. What am I pointing at? Okay. So basically there's this little branch right here. You can kind of see it. And that actually got caught in between the string that I've got holding up the plant. I'm gonna cut that out and get rid of that. And that will free up a little bit of space inside the plant. And then I'm gonna go ahead and follow this, this main branch here out to the one in front of the camera. And we're gonna follow that up, and we're gonna look for unnecessary branches. Okay, so the first branch that I come to that is unnecessary at this juncture is the sucker branch. You can see that growing out right here. So we're gonna cut that and get rid of it. And then following it up even more, we're gonna follow it up here. Oh, I popped it out. This branch is, I can actually pull this branch away from the whole plant, but I'm trying to get it to actually kind of grow with the rest of the plant. So it's kind of like leaning, you can see it's like leaning on the plant, right? So we're gonna go ahead and let it continue to do that. And it's okay to train your branches to grow together in close vicinity. They just have to be trimmed in a certain way that they can be compatible and breathe and still produce fruit and be healthy. So this branch here, we don't technically need this little sucker branch. You can see that. Get out of the way. We don't need this. And we certainly don't need this sucker branch either. So we're cutting that. Again, following up, we go to a fruit branch and then to another photosynthesis branch. And I'm gonna cut this one right here. And the reason why is because that is the branch that's facing inward towards the rest of the plants. And I actually need this to be breathable back here. So more than likely, we're gonna be cutting branches that are all facing inwards, that are making this all clustered and not allowing the light to get in. And going up here, the rest of it looks pretty decent. So we're gonna go ahead and leave that alone. And actually maybe we can just let that fall to the side. And that will actually help with the rest of the plant. So going back down here to where the main stalk divides itself, this is the stalk we just did. So we're actually going to go to the next stalk, which is this one here. This is the next stalk that we're doing. So I'm gonna cut this little guy because we don't need that. So following this stalk here, what we got in the way here? What's we got going on? Okay, this is one branch, a photosynthesis branch that I did not see. We're gonna go ahead and cut that one off. That was off the first stalk that we did. And then I'm gonna get these tomatoes out of the way and see what's going on in here. Okay, this is another branch that we don't need, which is right behind the tomatoes. You can see that. We're gonna cut that off. We just don't need that. And then standing up, and we're gonna kind of pop this out a little bit so we can kind of see what's going on. So following the stalk up here, what is this? Okay, so this sun branch, let's just call it a sun branch instead of a photosynthesis branch because it's easier to say. So this sun branch here, we don't really need this sun branch at this point. So we're gonna go ahead and cut that. We're gonna take that out. This is a sucker branch. We don't need that one. Take him out. And we have this sun branch, which is also intertwined with the fruit branch. Get that out. Okay, so that's really not so bad. We can hold on to that one. Here's another sucker branch right there. Boom. Get rid of it. Don't need it. So then we're kind of looking up the rest of the branch here. And I'm going to tentatively say that let's get rid of this branch, the sun branch right here. And then up here at the top, we're gonna go ahead and get rid of this sun branch as well, because it's facing inwards toward the rest of the other stalks. And that's actually just going to clog up all the sunlight in here. So it's okay if we cut the sun branches that are actually all facing inwards, because when we're finished here, most of these stalks, all 3 or 4 of these stalks or whatever, are going to be really close together, and they just don't need to. This will actually help them grow together, if you kind of get the drift. Okay, so for now, maybe we can let this one lean over. So we have our first 2 stalks that we did. We actually separated from the main group here, and we actually leaned them over so we can see what we're doing. So back to the main stalk. Main stalk, we already did these 2 here. We did this one and we did this one. Now we're gonna go to this stalk here. We're gonna move up the chain. We don't need this. Technically don't need this one either. This is an interesting branch here. We'll come back to that one. That branch here, we'll come back to that. Moving up the line here, we're leaving the fruit branch. It still has tomatoes. So now we kind of came into a little cluster. Let me get out of the way here. Okay, so this is a little bit of a cluster F. So we've got to figure out what's going on here. So this sun branch is coming off the main stalk, okay? And then we have this fruit branch, which is, okay, let's see what's going on here. Oh, okay, so here's a sucker branch I just found that's in the way. So you'll watch me cut that, and automatically it opens up some air, because we didn't need that sucker branch anyways. And right in this sun branch, there's another sucker. We're gonna cut that. Got that cut. Should almost cut the line. Okay, and then right above that one, about 1 inch, you'll see there's another sucker branch. We don't need that. By the time this sucker branch grows to the top of that line, it might produce one line, you know, 1 branch of fruit. It might not even be that big. Ooh, here we go. So instead of cutting this branch, before I cut it, I'm glad I saw this. Follow the branch up here and actually see if it's got other tomatoes on it. You see this branch I was fixing to cut, but look, it's got tomatoes growing on it. I mean, and so instead of cutting this branch altogether out, we're just going to stunt the growth of it by clipping the top of it. And now all we have left are the tomatoes. So this plant will actually produce these tomatoes without the plant continuing to grow, taking nutrients from the rest of the plant. And we're gonna have to cut away a couple of its sun branches because it's, again, it's clogging up the rest of the tree, so, or the bush, whatever you wanna call it. Let's get rid of that one. And let's go ahead and just get rid of this one as well. So now we got just a couple little branches left in here. Okay, so now we got that. So back to the stalk, moving up to the stalk here. This branch seems to be okay at the moment. Moving up here, we don't need this. This is another sucker. Cutting that. Moving up even further. To the right, we have another sucker branch. And if we go up here and actually follow it up here, you'll see that it's starting to produce fruit. So let's see if it can produce those fruit by stunting the growth of that, or cutting off the growth of that plant. We'll leave the tomatoes and move back down, back to the main stalk. Now we're just looking at the sun branch, and another sun branch right here. Oh, actually, that's a fruit branch. We're keeping that one. Moving upwards. So as we get up higher here, this is actually one of the main stalks. So all of these branches are pretty much staying. Everything that's up here, from here on up, we're keeping everything because we need it to continue to grow. So going back to the bottom of this one, we actually have this sucker branch right here, which is trying to take the place of the main stalk that we have. I'm gonna go ahead and, we're not gonna cut the whole thing. We're actually going to move up the branch. Okay, so this is another one of those branches that has fruit growing on it. So we're gonna stunt the growth of it. And actually it's got it's actually got fruit here, and then up here it's got fruit. So we're gonna see if we can actually produce those by stunting that growth and go ahead and let that grow. All right, let's see if that'll produce fruit for us. Okay, and this is we got a little bit of a problem, not problem, but it's a little clustered in here. So I think I'm going to go to the other side of the plant. Let's go walk over here. Okay, so if we just take a quick step back, actually I'm going to move this way. That way you can see the plant a little better. So this is the plant we're doing right here. And you can see those are the two branches that we pushed over to the side so we could get more of a view of what's going on in here. So this has not been pruned yet. You can see that it's unorganized and it's still kind of clustered. So we need to take care of that. So immediately I'm noticing this is the branch we said we were going to come back to. This would have been nice to have as a main branch on this particular plant. I don't think we're going to keep it as a main branch though. We've already got 1, 2, 3 main branches, 3 main stalks that we're going to focus on to continue to grow. Trying to grow 4 with the amount of space that I have between each one of these plants gets a little overwhelming. So I'm trying to stick to 3 main stalks that will grow up here for us that we can trellis. And I think 3 is a good round number. Easier to manage too. So this stalk here, the one that we're not real particular with, it's producing fruit. So we're keeping that stalk to produce the fruit, but we are not going to encourage it to grow anymore. There's a sucker branch growing right off here in the end. We're cutting that. Now we're just left with fruit. Moving back down, you can see that it's got another sucker branch. We don't need that one. We're gonna keep the sun branch even though there's not much there. And here's another sucker branch. We're cutting that. Oops, I just lost one of the tomatoes. And that happens. So yeah, basically we're just gonna let this one grow and just hang here. So once these fruits are grown or whatever, I'll come back and it's gonna get snipped. So let's see here. So going to the main stalk, now that we're done with this one, we're gonna go to the main stalk, follow this up. We don't need this little sucker. Get him out of there. We'll let this little guy grow just because we can. It's not really in the way at the moment. This is this sun branch right here that you're looking at is actually connected right here. And the thing I like about this sun branch is that it's actually shading. It's actually providing shade for the tomatoes. And I don't mind that. We actually like to keep some of these branches to provide shade for the tomatoes themselves. That way they don't get sunburned. So we're keeping that one. And then Okay, so this is all fruit right here. This is all a fruit branch, and then this is also a fruit branch. So this is a high yield fruit branch right here. We're totally keeping that. Okay, I see what's going on. So this fruit branch, the high yield fruit branch, has actually got a sucker branch growing right at the end of it. You can see it right here. You can see it right, get out of the way, right there. That's another sucker branch that's actually in the way of producing. See how far up it goes? That's like, that's clogging so much light, sucking so much energy from the plant that we don't need. You never grow a sucker branch off of one of your fruit branches. That is, they tend to do that, but you don't want to keep those, period. So we're gonna get rid of that. And immediately when I pull this out, you can see there's more light. Okay, so going back to the main branch here that we're working on. So we're coming up here. This is another sucker branch. This is the one that we trimmed earlier. So this is the one that's got, yeah, this one has the little fruit at the end right here. So we're keeping that. Oh, this is the one that's got the baby ones. Okay, so we're keeping this one. Moving up higher. There's a sucker branch right here, again, that we need to cut out. I'm going to cut this one. And it's got flowers on it. Wait a minute. It's got flowers on it. I think we're going to try to keep that one to see if it actually produces fruit. Yeah, so I think we're keeping this one. Sometimes there's a lot of stuff going on here. Okay, so here's another branch, another sucker branch, you can kind of see. And it's actually connected to the main stalk growing right up the center. So we're gonna cut that one. And that will let the plant breathe a little bit better. So taking a step back just momentarily, you can see that really the only kind of cluster that we have really is with all of these tomatoes. So the tomatoes are actually causing a lot of the clusterage look. We want this one though still we want this to shade the tomatoes. This one right here is the sun branch is also shading these tomatoes from this side because the sun is rising like this, like my thumb. That's the way the sun is going. So this branch actually provides shade in the sun in the evening, and this sun branch provides shade in the morning. And then combined, they're actually providing shade during the day. So these will be really good yielding tomatoes, and they won't get sunburned. Okay, so let's see, if I take a quick step back, you want to do this from time to time, kind of step back and just take a look at your tomato plant and see how it looks, and see if you can see through it. So really this tomato plant's kind of done. The last thing I would do to top it off is to, so, when we bring these other branches back to be combined with this, with the main stalk, you're gonna see that it starts getting a little clustered, a little clustered look. This branch here, I'm actually gonna move on this side and just kind of lean it in here. Okay. So now that so now we got the plant put back together. You can see that it's kind of got this little looks kind of like a river, kind of the snaking up the line. So in this case, now that we get all three stalks together, we want to just kind of take a look around it and see if there is any places where it just looks too clustered still. And if that's the case, I'm going to walk around. If that's the case, then we're just going to go ahead and do a little bit more clipping on the sun branches. And this, for the most part, looks pretty good. Yeah, this is one of the shade branches here, so we want to keep that. I think we can snip this one here, this little branch here. If you can see it, this one, we can go ahead and get rid of that one. We'll have to get in here, go ahead and cut that. Boom, that pops. See how much more light there is. Oh, and here's another little sucker branch we can cut right there. So you'll find these things as you begin putting the plant back together. Here's another one, cut that. Now it's starting to look a little bit more like what our goal is. So I think for the most part, this plant is done for now. Let me just go back here and reiterate that this plant is almost fully grown as far as we're going to let it go. So at some point these main stalks are probably going to get cut. But what I'm trying to do is I'd like for this little stalk here, this little sucker branch, to potentially take place of one of these other branches here once they get cut. So that's why we're letting this one grow. We're also letting this one grow because this potentially will take place of one of these other stalks in the future. Now, ideally, we'd like to have these little sucker branches lower down here, because the lower we can get the sucker branch, you know, at the most about 8 inches, depending on the circumstances. So ideally, right around 8 inches is where you want to keep that little baby sucker branch and nurturing that. So it will it'll grow up really long like this one and produce lots of fruit. If you have a plant like this, and let's just say that this sucker branch doesn't make it, and this sucker branch doesn't make it, and I essentially have to cut this whole plant down. Instead of cutting the plant down, because this is one of my high yield plants, and I actually put a little string right here to indicate that it's a high yield plant. So instead of losing this plant altogether, what you can do in a worst case scenario, or as another option, is you can actually, before you cut this plant down, is take one of these sucker branches that you've got growing, like this one or this one, preferably a larger sucker branch, and you can actually cut this little sucker branch right here. You can actually cut this sucker branch and you can put it in a jar of water, and it'll start producing roots out of the bottom. So essentially you're cloning this plant in case you want to regrow the same plant. So this plant, or this branch right here, will actually turn into a brand new plant that probably produces the same amount of high yield tomatoes. So you can always do that, like even mid stride. If you've when you go to do your pruning, you can actually go in here, find yourself a real nice sucker branch like this one, and you can actually just go ahead and cut that sucker branch, and it's good for it to be, you know, more than 12 inches if you can do that. So you go ahead and you cut that branch, pull off the bottom leaves, pull off that one, you pull off this one, you pull off this one, and you got about half of the stem's got branches on it, and then the bottom half has none. Pop that in a glass of water or a jar of water, and in about 2 weeks it'll start growing roots. You can then take this plant, put it back into a pot, and you can regrow this high yield plant, and that way you never actually lose the plant. So that's kind of that's how I'm doing my tomatoes. This isn't the perfect solution for everybody. This is just how I am doing it. There's a lot of different ways you can grow tomatoes, and there's hundreds of videos online. So whatever it is that however it is that you're trying to grow your tomato plant, really just find what works best for you. I hope you like this video. Again, my name's RavenSky, Keystone Farm Gardens. I'll probably do another one of these videos pretty soon. Ooh, it looks like my lens is a little dirty. Hope that doesn't affect my video. Anyways, I hope you liked the video. If you like, share, and subscribe, especially if you're local. And I will talk to you all later. Peace out. Stay safe.